Greetings, fellow readers. This is Rambling Collector here, back with another indie author review for all of you today. Today we will be talking about the first book of the Legends of Daer series, Champions of Tylwyth by R.S. Howell. Now, I was actually lucky enough to meet the author himself at a convention a while back, and though I am just now reviewing his book, I can say I thoroughly enjoyed it. But, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get to talking about it. So, my overall thoughts on this book, after reading it. It definitely had a rough start at first, due to how long the prologue was. However, the story quickly picks up after the prologue is concluded, which definitely makes up for it. And for those of you who are wondering, the main story that we are talking about here is about a young boy named Kirkland who goes out to find his sister Isabella hiding out in the woods. As he goes to try and chase her down, they are encountered by a woods witch whom uses blood magic to essentially visit all of Kirkland's past lives, to see his ancestry, where he comes from. How is it that Kirkland himself has so much potent magical energy, which is abnormal for their world. Over the course of this, we are introduced to a massive history lesson invoking ancient kings, rivalries between elves and humans, and even fighting against a blood god as well as a high mage. All of this combined, put together, made for a very interesting prologue that definitely dragged out a little bit as it kept going. But once we were finally past the prologue, where Kirkland, after the effects of this blood magic, was knocked into a coma, and Isabella goes on a journey to try to find a way to cure him along with her father. Well, in actuality, she follows her father as a way to make up for her own actions, as she views it as entirely her fault that Kirkland is now in the situation that he is in. Over the course of this, they encounter an ancient wizard, as well as get transported to another world, where they find not only wood elves, but the high elves, orcs, and even facing an army of the undead, whilst also encountering ancient animal spirits that acted as guardians to the tomb of the blood god Awakens. Needless to say, this definitely took off after a while, because after the introduction and the prologue was finished, when Kirkland finally fell into his coma, when Isabella finally takes over the main story, it goes by at a very rapid pace. And this definitely contained quite a few elements of high fantasy, such as ancient animal spirits, fallen gods, as well as species such as the elves and orcs, ranging from wood elves, who are a mix of elf and human hybrids, all the way to the orcs themselves. Now, the plot itself moves incredibly quickly, establishing 4 main heroes in a short amount of time, whilst also raising the stakes incredibly quickly with an army of the dead and the awakening of the blood god on the near horizon. So over the course of this series, this first book, I should say, we have 4 main characters: Isabella herself, an elf girl, a half-orc, and even Isabella's own father, all of whom become hosts to ancient animal spirits, with Isabella herself containing Lucian, the wolf spirit. All of whom very interesting different powers, especially the ability to fight other people with enhanced senses, great strength, and even ancient and powerful magic in some cases. I like how, as they merge with their animal spirits, the animal spirits know that they will have a chance of dying if they do this. However, they are willing to believe in Isabella's cause to essentially not only find a way to reawaken her brother, but also to keep Awakens from awakening from his prison. Because as of right now, the layers of reality are slowly tearing away between the blood god's prison and the world that they live in. And I've got to say, that definitely raises the stakes a lot. And the fact that the blood god himself is very rarely seen, except for maybe a few moments here and there, definitely gives a very Sauron-esque type of threat to him, because we do not physically see him interact with the world as much, but we know how much of a threat he is due to ancient history, as well as the various few interactions that occur throughout this book, as well as from his followers, which I can safely say, very interesting overall. Now, again, one thing I definitely did have a bit of an issue with was just how fast-paced this was. Because literally over the course of this entire book, we have 4 main heroes who are brought into the fold. And from all of that, we get a bit of exposition here and there, such as being introduced to the High Elves, who are incredibly arrogant purebloods. Boy, doesn't that remind me of Harry Potter a little bit. But overall, it doesn't hurt it as much, but it's definitely a lot of info to take in once you start. Now, let's move on to random thoughts here. So, random thoughts. If I may, I believe that this book has a lot of promise, and I'm very curious to see what the second book is going to contain. Especially with, spoiler alert, Kirkland does reawaken at the end of the novel, wondering where exactly Isabella has gone. And from what we see in the epilogue, we see that he himself has encountered dreams of facing 4 spirit animals clad in dark armor. So that possibly means that Kirkland is going to be manipulated into fighting the 4 spirit animals and unknowingly fighting his own sister. I get the feeling that Kirkland, while he was unconscious, was, what's the word I'm looking for? Has his mind touched by the Blood God, and the Blood God will use Kirkland as his unknowing champion, as well as, I want to say, ace in the hole or Joker card in a way. Someone who you would not expect doing the ultimate betrayal. Because Isabella has been fighting so hard throughout the entire book in order to save her brother. But now, Kirkland himself believes that he needs to save Isabella. So I'm left to wonder, are we going to see a clash of siblings later on? And more importantly, there are other bits and pieces throughout the story that leads to the very well done promise of a second book, which I've heard is already out, and I might need to take a look at it once I finish some of the other ones in my collection. I feel like this series has a lot of good promise to it, with the whole premise being nature and natural magic facing off against ancient dark blood magic and fallen gods. The power of teamwork, fighting together for a common cause, against one who fights alone for their own gain. The classic tropes of high fantasy, anyway. And I really like how Isabella is able to bring all these various races and communities together in one united purpose throughout. Because before this, orcs, wood elves, and even some humans did not trust each other at all. But over the course of this novel, we see how orcs, elves, hell, even giants learn to communicate with one another, break the communicational boundaries, and sort of come together to face their common foe. And I will say, the final fight between Isabella and the necromancer in charge of the undead army was definitely worth the wait. It was brief, it was flashy, and it was very well done. I enjoyed it immensely. Now with that being said, let's move on to the final score. So overall, I feel comfortable giving Legends of Daer Book 1, Champions of Tylwyth, a solid 8 out of 10, in my personal opinion. And the only reason it is an 8 out of 10 is because, like I said, the prologue itself does tend to drag a little bit, but once you are past that, you're in for a very fast-paced and very enjoyable high fantasy read. I highly recommend you all check this one out if you haven't already. And if you're curious to see some of the other independent authors that I've covered in the past, I will leave a link to that playlist here at the end of this video. Or, if you're curious to see some of the other books that I've covered over the time on this channel, I will leave a link to that playlist as well. I really hope you all enjoyed this video, and I really hope you all will be able to check this book out for yourself. Give it your own thoughts and opinions and see what you all think. R.S. Howell definitely has a lot of promise with this novel, and I'm really curious to see just how far he's going to take this series. I'm genuinely curious to see just how much more of this adventure there is to find. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much again for listening to this crazy man's ramblings. It really means a lot if you stuck around to the end of this video. And if you liked it, feel free to leave a like, comment your thoughts on what you thought of this review and this book down below. And if you're curious for further videos, feel free to subscribe and let me know your thoughts, as well as any future suggestions you would like me to cover for this channel. Once again, thank you all for listening. This is Rambling Collector, signing off for now. Have a great day, fellow readers.